Manhattan Stardust, Chapter 7, The Coup de Foudre. "Gary," said Emilio over an espresso after a fiercely waged basketball game on Sunday morning in Queens, during which he lofted the winning shot off a neat pass down the middle from yours truly. "Can you do me a favor?" I couldn't turn the guy down, not during the bien-être of our victory celebration. "Sure, as long as it's not like one of my father's favors," I replied. "I doubt it." "Good, shoot." "It's about Jasper." "What about Jasper?" "Haven't you noticed?" "The lisp?" "Yeah, that's part of it." When Bernie recently referred to my friend as a fruitcake, I confessed that Jasper's affected lisp had come to mind. "What's the other part?" "The other part, Gary, is that he's overdoing the gay thing. It's not just the lisp, it's the giggling, the wrists, the scarves. I don't know what's gotten into him. If I wanted a girl for a partner, I wouldn't be gay." Right. I had to think hard about that one, but I began to see where he was coming from. Emilio, who was and is gay, played a good game of basketball and wasn't afraid to drive the lane and throw a few elbows around as he did. Jasper had dropped out of our Sunday pickup a while ago, incidentally, or coincidentally with the lisp. "Maybe you can talk to him, Gary." "And do what?" "Just find out what's going on. I want the old Jasper back, the manly one. The one who married 2 women, the one who divorced them. If I wanted to marry a queen, I would have done so. Come on, Gary, help me out." The last time I had helped Emilio out, I'd gotten a black eye that ruined my mascara. All part of a little favor I was asked to render, so I was a little leery. However, Jasper had begun to act a bit queer, and I mean queer as in strange, not as gay. But that was the strange part of it, because he was acting more queer than he was, which was strange. And queer. Clear? I was about to write that I took him out for a beer, but that's too many rhymes at one go, and besides, it wasn't true. He preferred wine. So wine it was in the village, veritably, in an establishment smelling of spilled drinks. "So," he said after his first sip. "So," I replied. "Yeah," he said. He wore a rainbow-colored scarf wrapped around his neck that trailed down to his knees, and I could swear his eyelashes were either longer or darker than usual, and his lips looked ruddier than the cherry, as the song went, whose name escapes me at the moment. I was angling for an intro, but wasn't so sure of the approach shot, maybe because I was taken aback by Jasper's new little addition to his repertoire. For some reason or other, he kept throwing his hands up from time to time to gather his hair, which had grown out quite a bit, and pull it over a shoulder to twirl. I can't say why, but it made me feel funny in the stomach. "Geez," I said. "Yeah," he replied, twirling and then polishing off another glass. It took a few more glasses for the conversation to emerge from its monosyllabic plateau, when Jasper asked how the new Atlantis with Helena was managing, so I took advantage to elaborate, although it was pretty tricky. I don't know if you've ever tried to add a 4th wheel to a tricycle, but it's hard, and what you come up with becomes something else. If you're lucky, you end up making a wheelbase for a vehicle that can go a lot faster and with a smoother ride. I told Jasper that we were all keeping our fingers crossed that Helena was the kind of 4th wheel that would send us into an even more exciting orbit, as he promised me when he started his whole platonic diversion. Exciting, yes, so far. Being a scientist, Helena was pretty focused, and being a particle scientist, she was pretty focused on pretty small things, or strings, I guess. This tendency sometimes made Eden less a land of milk and honey than a battleground, but Jennifer and Miranda were up for it, and the reconciliations made it worth their while. And mine too, even if I stayed mainly on the sidelines. Pretty soon I was wondering how I could ever have gotten around on a trike now that we had the Aston Martin. That's just being human, isn't it? The fringe benefits of a quaternary star system were multiple. What I mean is the multiple ways we could pair off, join, intermingle, and diversify. It gave us 4 different triples with one man or woman taking a time out, 6 different couplings, and then the quadruple as our pièce de résistance. For a numbers guy like me, heaven just got more heavenly. There might be a few orbital perturbations from time to time, and although Helena hadn't actually taken up residence in Arden, she was here with the founding trilogy more often than not, while her pad near Columbia became a cozy satellite for a change of pace. "You know, Gary," said Jasper once I had finished the monologue, "I'm happy for you." "Thanks, Jasp. And I'm happy for me, too. In fact, I've never felt happier," he replied from the bottom of his next glass of wine. I remembered a snatch from another song, one about butter masquerading as cream, because if this was a happy Jasper, what would an unhappy one look like? Margarine? This wasn't the Jasper of old. In fact, this wasn't even the Jasper Emilio had described flapping around like the soul of the wear your gender inclinations on your sleeve set. It was a Jasper who looked down in the dumps despite the costume and the novel gestural accessories. "Happy," he reiterated gloomily. "And do you want to know why?" I was puzzling over the discrepancies and therefore a bit slow off the mark, which gave Jasper the opening he so obviously yearned for. "I'll tell you, Gary." And, give him credit, he told me, in between more of the red wine he'd been sloshing all night, and which I sloshed along with him to keep up appearances. And it all ended up with him blubbering about Emilio and how he didn't deserve such a guy, and describing the fruits of his research into what made marriages and other coupling successful, all via his failed online dating startup, Honesty. Because you know what, Gary? It's not about honesty. That's why the bucks never rolled in for me. Nobody wants honesty. It's about letting the person you want feel better than you. That's what makes the couples that work. Somebody's got to be the fall guy. Somebody's got to take the rap. Somebody's got to be the dwarf star in one of those binaries your platonic friend is always talking about. "Are you sure?" I ventured, thinking of my mission on Emilio's behalf. "I'm sure as taxes, Gary." "Well, I mean, the man, gay or not, had his convictions." "Wow. The only way for me to hold on to that goddamn godsend Emilio is for me to make him feel more manly. But nothing. I'll make the sacrifice. Anyway, I used to play girls' roles in our all-boys high school Shakespeares, but that's besides the point. Show me a successful couple, and I'll show you a couple where one of the two gives in. Look at your dad." I admit he had a point. Dad had become so Frenchified with his scarves, berets, mangled French phrases, and, appallingly enough, a recently acquired ancient French car that looked like something out of an old-fashioned movie about the future. Miranda and Jennifer, not exactly fans of Genevieve, could hardly stomach the makeover, but Dad kept insisting, like Jasper in fact, that he was happier than ever. However, unlike Jasper, he actually was happier. "It's the coup de foudre," Dad advised. "The what?" "The lightning bolt." "Whatever you say, Dad." Strangely enough, Jasper said the same thing, but in a much more elegant-sounding way. "It's what happens when you get hit, Gary. And I've been hit bad, and if it takes the girl in me to keep my guy happy, so be it. After about the 7th or 8th glass of wine, the tears were welling up in his eyes as he spoke about losing Emilio, and he looked at me and asked if I thought Emilio still liked him. I don't know whether you've ever seen a grown gay man cry, but it kind of has an effect even on a non-gay man like myself. I mean, I wanted to give him a hug, despite the mascara and rouge, and so I put my arm around him and we swayed our way to the exit where I held the door for him, like a man. It was warm and clear outside, a perfect early summer midnight, and as I helped Jasper brush back a few tears, I could see why his high school drama teachers cast him as their Desdemonas and Portias and Beatrices, because with his moue and eyeliner and ruddy lips he looked sweeter than a berry, and I should have known, said a strangely familiar voice that made me lift and turn my head just as I was on the verge of comforting the girl in Jasper. And when I recognized the face that appeared in the light, it was suddenly lights out for me. When I think back on all the times that fate has struck in my life, like, say, a gypsy in an anvil chorus, I think back to that moment when I was rescued from a fate worse than a slow and painful demise. But it wasn't a gypsy who rescued me in the nick of time. It was a guy I could never imagine thanking in my life, that faux D'Artagnan, Gerhard, the would-be musketeer I had floored fatefully with a right cross just as he was about to smash a chair on Jennifer's head. And to explain what happened, I have to describe the right cross. I distinctly remember waking up at the theater, nudged by Miranda, rising quickly from my seat, and looking the bum in the eye on stage, while he obviously got a good look at me, chair suspended above his head, right in tandem with my belief. That's when I punched him, and that's when all hell broke loose on the off-Broadway stage, and Bernie's wiles kept me out of the hands of the NYPD. It took several days and the combined attentions of Jennifer, Miranda, and Helena, who ministered to swellings with a special talent, but my left eye still retained the colors of the rainbow, ironically enough. I shivered to recall how close I had come, but that was all I could recall about the chance encounter with the belligerent actor after I woke up back at Shangri-La seeing stars. Several days later, Emilio stopped by, all grins, and with a box of Davidoffs. Okay, they weren't Cuban, but the price tag I knew was a hefty one. Thanks, said Emilio. For what? I've got my Jasper back because of you. Oh, here's something else. Don't mention it. You're the best, in fact. I blushed a little. See you next Sunday, continued Emilio. You'll be okay for the game, won't you? I think so. And just as Emilio was about to leave, I held him up. Emilio, I said, can you do me a favor? Sure. What exactly happened the other night? Didn't Jasper say? I thought he'd have whispered all the gory details in your ear by now. No, I replied uneasily. That's strange. I know how close you guys are. Yeah, I said, a bit dry in the mouth. He told me everything as soon as he dropped you off. After that phony actor-director sucker punched you, Jasper sent him to the ER. Simple as that. He gave him a real coup de grace. What a man. And? And what? And did he say anything else? I said, was there anything I didn't remember that he remembered? Yeah, he threw his scarf away. Why? Oh, nothing, I answered, exhaling. I just wondered, that's all. Rest up. And by the way, Jasper's back at point guard for us next week. That wasn't necessarily good news for our basketball team, because Jasper had no outside shot to speak of. But for other reasons, I thought it was definitely worth a cigar, which I lit with a big, fat smile of relief.